authentic connection with the audience, first and foremost, is always about delivering value to them. Now, value doesn't just mean an aha moment, because there are plenty of speakers and internet self-proclaimed gurus who will share many ideas with people which lead to aha moments, but don't really stick. So what's important is to deliver an aha moment, but then also deliver a usable understanding of the topic for the future so that people can take that back home with them and use it when they need to. The second sort of tip I have for building an authentic connection is really to speak in your own language, in your own words, work past the jargon, work past the headlines, and deliver real insight. So I avoid using terms like VUCA because it's extremely overused and doesn't really mean a lot. I also avoid picking up headlines or best practices and just throwing them at the audience like 40% of all jobs are going to be automated soon. That's not true. The person who published that report also said that's not true. So we have to look past the headlines and help the audience do that as well. That builds a sense of trust and credibility. And finally, I found that a sense of humor works wonders in terms of audience engagement and building that authentic connection. It's a great icebreaker, and it just opens everyone up to a more relaxed and informal exchange of ideas. It's a very challenging thing to do. It's quite difficult actually, because no company is perfect. You will always have your pros and cons as a company. So when you represent the company, you obviously have to be a bit cautious about that. My personal experience, especially in the last year with Epitome, where I'm in more customer-facing situations as well, not just as a public speaker, I found that authenticity and honesty and transparency still works. And in fact, it might actually be even more powerful when you're representing a company, because most people don't expect company representatives to be fully transparent with them. So when I walk into a room or stand up on a stage and talk about what Epitome does well and what it doesn't do well, it is a bit of a revelation and a bit of a surprise to people who are listening. Now, obviously, this does not mean that you go into the details of everything on stage, because firstly, there's usually not time for that. And secondly, there are some conversations that are best had in private, one-to-one, or behind closed doors. So the way I look at it is use the tip of the iceberg approach. So share everything transparently, maybe the first 10%, and then save the other 90% for later when you're in a more engaged and one-to-one situation. Success for me after a presentation is when members of the audience come back to me with feedback about how they used or were impacted by what I shared. Notice that I said used or impacted. So I'm not talking about the compliments people give to a speaker once they've come off stage. That's always great, because it's a really nice way to be introduced to new people and get to know them and exchange ideas based on their immediate thoughts after your presentation. But I'm not talking about that. I'm also not talking about the formal feedback that audience members give to the event organizers. That is also important, and it's very welcome because it's a great way to benchmark, great way to get tips to improve. But I'm not talking about that either. What I'm talking about is emails or calls or meetings that happen weeks or months or even years later after you deliver something to an audience. And at that point, someone tells me that something that I said or shared inspired them to make a change in themselves, their team, or their company. That's the good stuff right there. And that's when I know I've hit the mark.